All right. So like I said, this is the prompt that you will see on test today. It's the exact one. And I also included on your sheet there the acronym BUCK, which we've only seen once before this semester, but hopefully you remember something from last year. So you see right there what the different letters stand for, and the B stands for box the main verbs. So what are the main verbs? What do we think are the main verbs in this prompt? I'm going to go ahead and read it out, the whole thing out loud. So, the growth of the automobile industry in the early 20th century transformed American life. At the beginning of the 1920s, there were 8 million cars in the United States. By the end of the decade, this number had almost tripled to 23 million. Use the provided sources to evaluate the impact of the automobile on the American economy and society.
Use and evaluate.
Use and evaluate. And why are those our main verbs, Chico?
Because that's what you gotta do.
That's what the prompt is asking you to do. Very good. All right, so use and evaluate. Go ahead on your paper. Let's box those main verbs, okay? Use and evaluate. This is what the prompt is actually asking you to do. Are there any other main verbs on there? Are there any other main verbs? No? Okay. All right then. Well, let's talk about the key information then. So underline key information. That's what the U stands for. Underline key information. What's the key information? So if these verbs are telling you what to do, what's the key information that you need to be able to do those things?
What'll be the rest of the sentence, the impact of the automobile on the American economy and society?
Okay, so it's asking you to evaluate. This is telling you what to evaluate. So the impact of the automobile, I'm not crossing that out, that's underlining, on the American economy and society. Okay?
Provided source.
All right, Chico says, use the provided sources, so we can also underline provided sources. Rodney, you have something else to add? No? Okay. So use the provided sources, that's your underlining that key information there. Underline that key information. Any other key information we need to underline? Think we're good? All right. So let's cross out extraneous or unnecessary information. Okay, so the first sentence, you think the first sentence is unnecessary? The growth of the automobile industry in the early 20th century transformed American life. It's not really telling you to do anything, is it? No. So let's cross that one out. Any others we can cross out? So we need the rest of these to know how to know what we're supposed to be writing about, or is there still more unnecessary information in here?
No, I don't need that.
I don't know about the, at the beginning of the 1920s, there were 8 million cars in the United States. I don't know about that part. I don't know if we need that part.
Nah, we
Okay.
could like, it's telling us how, every now.
Well, it's telling you how what all started out.
The cars in the United States.
Okay, well, it's giving us some context. It's giving us some background information. But is it telling us what to write? That's the question you gotta, when I say extraneous information here, I mean, it's not telling you directly what to write. Okay, so is this sentence right here telling us what to write?
No.
No, we can cross this one out. What about the next sentence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can cross that one out as well, right? So this is all just context, background information. Okay, so now we've narrowed things down a little bit, crossed out that extraneous information. What's the next step? What do you do next?
Know what you're gonna say.
Okay, know what you're going to say. You create the say what chart. It's just a T chart. You can write that on there right underneath. Put the say over here. on this side of the T-chart under say.
Use and evaluate.
Why? Why do we do that?
Because that would the prompt say.
Well, because the prompt, those are the two main verbs we picked out as, these are the actions that the prompt is asking you to do. The prompt is asking you to use, and it's asking you to evaluate. Okay? Now, what are we using?
Provided sources.
Okay, so the provided sources, I'm just going to put sources here. We're using sources, the ones that are provided to you in the packet. Okay, what about evaluating? What are we evaluating?
Yeah,
Okay, the impact, and the impact of what?
The automobiles on the American economy and society.
All right, so we're evaluating the impact of automobiles on both the economy and the society, and we can also kind of narrow that down to, just talk about the 1920s, even though that doesn't say it here. In this sentence, we know we're in the module on the 1920s. They mentioned the 1920s up here. We're talking about the impact in the 1920s, okay? So then what do you do with this information? What do you do once you've bucked the prompt? What does that help you do?
narrow it down better.
Okay, you've narrowed it down better. Raina, what can you do with this say what chart? Don't know? Don't know what you can do with this chart? I mean, why did we go through this whole process? Why did we go through the trouble of picking out main verbs and underlining key information and crossing out the extraneous stuff? Why did we go through all that trouble?
It makes it easier.
Makes what easier?
Writing about this.
Okay, so it makes the next part, the actual writing, easier because now you can look back and you can, as you go and evaluate your own writing, as you're creating this thing, you can stop and say, okay, is what I'm writing now helping me to evaluate the impact of the automobile, or did I get off topic? This can also, maybe not for this particular prompt, but for other prompts, it can maybe even help you give some structure or organization to your essay, whatever you're writing. So Rodney, just based on this, what do you think our structure would be for if you were answering this prompt? What do you think? So we're using the provided sources to evaluate the impact of the automobile on the American economy and society. How would you structure an essay like that? Any ideas?
Are you saying how to start off the sentence?
Well, not necessarily how to start with a sentence, but how would you structure this essay?
Tied.
Well, I'm going to ask you to write in a tied format, yes. But more so than that, what organization could you use to answer this question?
They're talking about persuade or inform?
What's that?
Like persuade or inform?
Well, we're going to be persuading because you're evaluating, okay? You're evaluating the impact. That means in history, we really think of everything we do as being persuasive. You're making an argument. So obviously you will be informing some, but if you're writing this, who's your audience? You're going to do this prompt on the test. Who's your audience? You're going to write this for the second part of the test. What's that? Somebody that wants a car? Well, think about it. You're sitting here in history class. You're writing this. Who are you writing it to or for? Who's going to read it? Me. I'm your audience. I'm your audience. And so you're not doing so much to inform me because, I already know about this stuff. What you're trying to do is persuade me of some argument, okay?